Now it's your turn.
Sorry. I had to piggyback.
So I
You get
Micah,
2, by the way.
Oh yeah. So I talked to Micah a little bit, just about the stats, and I'm curious why you guys kind of did away with the ability to set your own stats in terms of, hey, I want more mana or I want some purity or whatever. But then B, I'm also thinking like on a couple of the classes where it's actually split. For example, the Demon Hunter. If I was to choose, like let's say I was a little heavy on certain abilities that only used one of the resources and not the other, I could almost screw myself. So it kind of adds a second aspect to that. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, like, is there any way that the player can have more control over that at some point other than just, speccing your items?
Well, the main reason we didn't do attribute point spending was that as a customization system, it was not a very good customization system. What you found was, my favorite example is, if you want to know how to build pretty much any character in Diablo 2, you take as much strength as you need to wear the armor that you're targeting, and that's usually around 120 or around 220, depending on what type of armor. You take 75 dexterity, because that's the amount you generally need for good block percentages. You take no energy at all, unless there's like one type of build you can make on a sorceress that uses energy shield. And then you put everything else in vitality. Yeah. That's a shitty customization system. Like, that's just not a good system. And the thing is, as soon as you get into kind of just pure mathematical attribute point spending, there's a mathematically right answer. And that, we are not so smart as to outsmart all the incredibly intelligent people in our community who will find that mathematically right answer. So we focus on customization systems that literally feel more like customization systems, that feel more like they are catering to play style, as opposed to just being able to move around these attribute points when we know that there's an optimal way to do that. So that's the primary reason. There was a kind of a second...
Well, yeah, so what about the case then where, let's say my resources are split, I'm playing a Demon Hunter, I tend to favor the skills that maybe suck one resource over the other, and I have that limitation where, okay, I'm constantly using one of the resources, but the other one I'm not touching.
Well, part of how you play a character and build a character is how you interact with all the different systems within that. So if you are making a character that's interacting completely with one resource, well, one, you're probably running out of resource a lot. You probably aren't getting the full advantage of that other one. Yeah, that's probably not an optimum build. Anytime you have a customization system that allows player interaction, to have good builds, you have to have bad ones. So if you're not utilizing that second resource, maybe you've built a bad build. Or maybe you figured out how to use runes to recycle your common resource so well that you don't need the secondary resource, in which case that's your uber hatred build that you can post online and say, I figured out how to make a build that doesn't even use discipline, and it's awesome. Most likely what you'll figure out is, even with your uber hatred build, there's something within that side, second resource that's going to make you better. At the very least, you take shadow power, because you can fire it off all the time if you're not using discipline for anything else, and it gives you a really good attack damage bonus. And everybody wants attack damage. So, I think there's always a way to build a character, but I don't think it's invalid to say build a character. You could build a wizard that barely uses a resource at all. And that's fine if you can figure out how to do it. That's kind of how we've built the system. But we've also tried to make sure that if you do that, you're probably not optimal. And that's okay too. A lot about how you build characters in Diablo is about not having to be optimal. I actually showed off the Battle Mage builds specifically because I think the Battle Mage is a great example of how people build characters in Diablo, which is, if you're trying to make an optimal character, a melee mage is not the thing you should be building. And yet, in Diablo 2, I don't know of a Battle Mage build that I would call optimal, but they're incredibly popular. Yeah. And they are viable, and that's what's actually important.
They're fun to play.
Yeah. Right. And that's what I would say. Diablo is all about a game of viable builds, not optimal ones.